Hello everyone, my name is Bailey Monroe and welcome to my major project presentation for KIN 516. Today I'll be presenting my research proposal titled Authenticity and Elasticity in Coach-Athlete Relationships, Exploring Coaching Behaviors in a Swim Club Context. We'll start off with a strong introduction to give some context into the Canadian swimming environment, as well as some of the current literature around my topic. Then we'll move into the methods section where I'll touch on crucial pieces such as the study design, sample and recruitment, statistical power, measures and instruments, and then the procedures for the proposed research. Then I'll go over the proposed analyses and how this research can make a difference, and then we'll wrap it up with a quick conclusion. First, an introduction. In Canada, amateur swimming is a highly professionalized sport that often features full-time coaches in a variety of positions throughout club organizations. From the ever-present title of head coach to assistants and age group coaches, youth swim clubs can feature a variety of roles and an even greater variety of personalities. In an international study of swimming coaches, Delamitros et al. Found that over 30% of respondents did not have any sports science-related studies in their background, which implies that swimming coaches come from a variety of academic and practical backgrounds. Some work has been done in evaluating the most common personality traits of elite swimming coaches, with traits such as conscientiousness, openness, agreeableness, and extroversion being seen as desirable. In a related study, Cook et al. Also noted that differences between the world-leading coaches who were producing Olympic gold medalists and world-class coaches that were producing top 8 level athletes were magnified in the perception of the athletes. Perhaps most interestingly, the interaction of these two variables suggests that the coach's self-evaluation of undesirable dark triad traits were significantly higher than in their athletes' evaluation of them, and the athletes were also more likely to assign a significantly higher level of positive Big Five traits to their coach as well. This suggests a positive perceptive divergence between the expression of the true self that might be found in authentic leadership and the actual behaviors exhibited to succeed in the role. The underlying research question is investigating what behaviors coaches exhibit according to their coaching context and how that might vary with their background and experience. Underlying hypotheses include that perhaps some behaviors are elastic to the age or competitive level of the athlete, versus other factors remain more constant, as perhaps they're desirable at every level of development. There appears to be some degree of behavioral elasticity among coaches between what is authentic to themselves or necessary to be successful in their role or required to gain favor among their staff or athletes. This could be described as an application of situational leadership. Researchers and practitioners have provided commentary on the necessary variance in coaching behaviors to best fit the needs of various athletes. For example, a positive praise-only approach with success for every young student, perfect for young athletes, or perhaps the sandwich approach, engulfing constructive criticism in praise, or supportive truths that combine description with clear instruction to correct the error for senior athletes. Cote et al. Chose to define 4 clusters of coaches in alignment with the broader taxonomy of sport. You have participation facilitators that support the sampling years, the adolescent recreation coach, the specialized adolescent performance coach, and the investing performance coach for older athletes and adults seeking ultimate performance. With each cluster comes a description of how coaches can help athletes develop the C's: competence, confidence, connection, character, and caring in a developmentally appropriate way. Far less academic work has been done on how swim coaches who persistently work with certain stages of athletes in the club development model actually modulate their behaviors to be most successful in their roles, despite the massive daily influence this would have on the athletes. Statistically, this could be represented by significant differences in the exhibition of these behaviors according to age, or the persistence of a significant non-zero presence throughout the club. The validity of this question is supported by research done in other sports. Parkington et al. Found that soccer coaches working with younger age groups, under 10s and 11s, most often used instructive techniques, while coaches working with older athletes, 16 and under, used feedback and, interestingly enough, punitive measures. An ideal progressive combination of coaching behaviors could have a positive effect on development. When there's a positive divergence of parent and athlete assessment compared to the coach's self-evaluation, this may or may not be a reflection of broadly desirable coaching traits. Martin et al. Found that there were significant differences between the coaching preferences of girls, boys, mothers, and fathers. These ranged from promoting activity to competitive challenge to providing opportunities for skill development to pieces like democratic leadership and social support. These desires for democratic leadership and social support were echoed in research by Terry and Howe, who found that athletes had even stronger preferences for training behavior and rewarding behavior and seldom desired their coach to exhibit autocratic leadership. The work by Delamitros et al. Also included investigation on interpersonal and intrapersonal interactions, which included interactions with assistant coaches and the athletes themselves. And these interactions could impact the athlete or assistant assessment of coach traits completed through an instrument, such as the Leadership Practices Inventory, or LPI, as described by Kuzes and Posner. Given the evidence for coach behavioral regulation in the sport of swimming and the lack of sports-specific research in behavioral regulation across different age groups, the proposed research would contribute to the field by filling the gap in understanding around coaching behaviors and expectations at different developmental levels of Canadian swim clubs. The work would be meaningful by creating a snapshot of current practices in the Canadian coaching environment, which could be compared to best practices to initiate targeted coach development initiatives. Let's have a look at the methods behind this proposed research. The study will follow a mixed methods approach featuring an explanatory sequential design. This will combine the best of both worlds of quantitative and qualitative approaches by gathering some statistics around the swim coaching landscape in Canada and then complementing it with domain knowledge and idea generation around why coaches modify their behaviors when working with different athletes or staff. In principle, this will be an observational study with correlative elements, measuring factors such as coaching behaviors in relation to athlete age and coach experience without influencing the subjects directly. The instrument through which data will be collected will be a questionnaire, which will include quantitative and qualitative elements. There's very little opportunity for any secondary data to be collected, given that existing demographic data would be protected by coaching organizations and national sport orgs. The research would be conducted through partnerships with multiple organizations that have a vested interest in the success of coaches and swimmers in Canada. The CSCA, Canadian Swim Coaches Association, supports the professionalization and further development of swim coaches in Canada, while Swimming Canada works with coach developers at the provincial level, such as Swim Alberta, and the national level through the CAC, to ensure a robust development pathway to grassroots coaches across the country. Therefore, the target population would be the approximately 4,000 swimming coaches actively registered in Canada during the 2023-2024 season, with the research aiming to include as many eligible respondents as possible. Therefore, this is an instance of non-probability sampling, with the goal of including as many participants as possible with no bias beyond those that choose to participate. Prospective respondents will be recruited with the support of their respective coaching organizations via email, as well as having opportunities for in-person follow-up at national and regional swim coaching conferences. These conferences provide learning opportunities for coaches at both the grassroots and high performance level, which will facilitate the survey's requirement for evaluating a cross-section of the Canadian swim coaching population. Even at a realistic response rate of 10% among Canadian swim coaches, producing an N of approximately 400, the research should be able to derive meaningful quantitative insights, using a 95% confidence interval corresponding to a z-score of z equals 1.96, a generous sample proportion implying maximal variability of p equals 0.5, and a desired margin of error of 5%, E equals 0.05, the necessary sample size to produce insights at a 95% confidence interval with a margin of error of 5% can be calculated as 384.16 coaches, rounding up to produce N equals 385. Although the population is finite, given that the sample is still a relatively small proportion of the population, estimated from 9.6 to 10%, there's no need to apply a finite population correction factor. Power analysis can be completed once the effect size is known using an alpha of 0.05, beta of 0.2, and therefore a power of 0.8, as well as the sample size of N equals 385. The closest analog for the proposed research is Parrington et al.'s work in soccer, where Pilet's trace statistic showed a MANOVA effect of 0.877 per punitive behaviors in older athletes with a P of less than 0.05, and approaching statistical significance 0.981 for feedback behaviors. Overall, the quantitative portion of the research should present no problem in offering statistical power and significance. Given that the core research question is how coaches self-regulate their external behavior according to their coaching context and experience, and how they're subsequently perceived by their athletes, it's important to classify their placement in the swimming landscape appropriately according to the age and competitive level of their involvement, from regional to international. And here's a couple pictures showing my progression through the system from being a participation facilitator with my 7-year-olds to the adolescent performance coach or adolescent recreation, adolescent performance coach, and now as the head coach of a university team, coaching high performance athletes getting ready for the Olympics, and investing performance coach. Typical roles in swim clubs include the head coach, an assistant head, a head age group coach, and development coaches, and other assistants whose primary duties are coaching rather than any management or admin. Kang et al. Found decreases in neuroticism, increases in openness to experience, and increases in conscientiousness among workers who were classified as entrepreneurs, managers, and supervisors rather than simple employees. So perhaps a similar pattern might be seen in head, assistant head, and head age group coaches compared to developmental coaches or assistants. However, given that these would be more senior employees and that some of these attributes have been shown to develop naturally through maturation, including the experience level and age of the coach along with their role, would be a beneficial control to separate career development coaches from young grassroots coaches in their first coaching experience. Here we have a little picture of myself in my first junior coaching role assisting with the group to 10 years later. We can see the development of maturation and the loss of hairline as I became a university coach. Therefore, the essential measures to contain coach demographic information include age, sex, seasons of coaching experience, their primary coaching role within their organization, expressed by primary athlete development stage and level, as well as their capacity, perhaps as an entrepreneur, manager, supervisor, or employee. Following the collection of demographic information, coaches should complete a short self-assessment on the GSOEP Big 5 Inventory, BFIS, to provide a sense of the progression of personalities working in various stages of the athlete development model, as well as the Authentic Leadership Questionnaire, ALQ, to determine the degrees of authenticity throughout the model. There should also be a self-evaluation of relative rates of coaching behaviors as included in Partington et al., such as positive feedback, humor, hustle, praise, or scolding. So the differences in these factors can be analyzed across age groups and against the experience or age of the coach. Rather than an observer rating the occurrence of these behaviors, measurement would likely be self-evaluation through a scale from 0, having never exhibited this behavior, to 5, exhibiting it constantly in every practice. So there's an opportunity for potential evaluation against the ideal behavior composition model, such as the proportion of time spent on feedback or the type of feedback for a given age group. That model could even be survey designed using the results of another section where coaches rate the ideal incidence rate of each behavior. Overall, these quantitative metrics would provide valuable insights into who's coaching various segments of Canadian swimmers and their behaviors. An additional explanatory step to the initial quant process, an opportunity should be provided for coaches to participate in a qualitative section to dive deeper into ideas such as how they choose to express themselves, the behaviors they exhibit, and how they are viewed by their athletes, similar to the leader-observer model described by Kuz and Posner, in that any divergence is cause for reflection. Given that these gold medal winning world-leading coaches are so revered by their athletes to the degree that their positive traits are over-described and their negative traits are minimized compared to their authentic assessments of their true self, how do the athletes form these rosy ideals? An open-ended section imploring coaches to describe how they believe their athletes perceive them, how that might vary from their honest assessment, and the behaviors that led them there could be enormously interesting to thematically analyze. Coaches might act differently or more or less authentically with members of their staff or supervisors compared to their athletes. It'd be valuable to discuss how they could modify their behavior in each of those instances. Of course, this doesn't cover the athlete side, and that would be best served by another study. Questionnaires designed to include the sequential capture of target personality factors such as the Big 5 through BFIS, authenticity via ALQ, and the relative occurrence rates of coaching behaviors. The quantitative section will be complemented by an optional qualitative section, as we talked about, and this is presented as a self-contained package that's available online, anonymously, and distributed via email, or with paper packages at Canadian swim coaching conferences. And following the survey completion window of September 2024, the online results will be aggregated with the digitized version of paper results into a spreadsheet format. The qualitative portion of the questionnaire will be subject to thematic analysis by the research team, with responses considered within the context of the demographic information. These insights will be combined with statistical info for a final presentation. We could include anonymized quotes, and given the depth of discussion, further explanation or exploration through follow-up interviews with coaches that choose to self-declare as interested may be most appropriate to ensure maximal clarity. Overall, the procedures aim to accurately capture demographic information, psychometrics, and behavior of Canadian swimming coaches relevant to both coaching and managing perception. Now that we've taken a look at the methods, let's take a look at the proposed analysis. Given that the responses are a collection of individual responses from a snapshot in time, there's no time series data, but meaningful observational and correlational analysis can be done on several factors. Initial demographic analysis would shed interesting light into the composition of coaches, such as the ages of coaches working with various stages of athletes. The differences in age between coaches and their athletes might have implications for behavioral modification. It could paint a split picture of young grassroots coaches versus experienced development specialists. Also interesting might be the gender composition of coaches, differences in Big 5 traits between supervisory and employee roles, as well as effects of maturation as coaches go through their careers. Perhaps there's varying degrees of authenticity. This could be analyzed through a one-way ANOVA, with the development stage of the coach swimmers as an independent variable with multiple levels, and authenticity as the dependent variable. On a behavioral level, looking at differences in coaching behaviors would be interested. Are young swimmers getting technical feedback to help them get mastery? Are adolescent swimmers working through hustle behaviors and getting training opportunities? We could look at this through the sample mean of self-reported coaching behaviors on technical feedback above a given threshold, such as a rating 3 out of 5, in a statistically significant way. In a broader sense, are swimmers at each level experiencing positive feedback, humor, and praise, helping them develop love for the sport? Ultimately, these could be aligned to broader ideas of developing psychologically healthy youth and showing the difference a great coach can make. In conclusion, exploring how coaches choose to act in a quantitative way can provide large-scale insights as to how coaches are developed to coach in Canada and potentially prescribe interventions in education to improve the system as a whole. Let's tie it all together. In the bigger picture, the primary use of this research is to create a snapshot of Canadian coaching landscape in swimming. It gives us a chance to look at how coaches are coaching across the country and compare that to what we'd like to see. By engaging so many different coaches, personalities, and backgrounds from so many levels, it'll provide rich insights into how coaches come through the pathway and what they become along the way. All in all, this work is a swimming-specific look at the intersections of psychology and behavior, Authenticity versus playing politics, perceiving versus doing, and what it takes to move up in the coaching world. It leverages existing research in the areas observing how coaches modify their behavior according to context and experience, as well as the incentives for doing so, while filling the gap in describing self-regulation in swim coaching, especially in the unique context of the swim club. Here's a collection of my various sources for the project, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for watching.